my name is Haley. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago at my in-laws' anniversary dinner in front of 64 people, my mother-in-law stood up from her chair, tapped her wine glass with a spoon, and told the entire table that her son could have done so much better. She said it with a smile, the kind of smile that's been practiced in mirrors. I didn't knock over my glass. I didn't excuse myself to the bathroom. I sat at the far end of the table, next to my husband's elderly uncle, who'd been asleep since the soup corks, and I made a decision so quiet, it barely made a sound inside my own chest. But I need to go back. Because this story doesn't start at a dinner in Oakville. It starts in a walk-in clinic in Hamilton, Ontario, 7 years ago, when I was 22, and my father looked at me from a plastic chair and said, "You're the one I trust to figure things out." My father, Ray, worked for the city, Public Works. He drove a truck for 23 years, salting roads in January at 4 in the morning, so other people could get where they were going safely. My mother, June, and I'll use her name once and then call her what she became to me, which is a woman I no longer explain myself to. My mother left when I was 16. No dramatic scene. She just packed 2 suitcases on a Tuesday and moved in with a man she'd met at a scrapbooking convention in Brantford. My father didn't say a bad word about her. That was the thing about him. He had too much dignity for bitterness. I was the older of 2. My brother Cole was 12 when she left. He took it harder in ways I could see and ways I couldn't. I made lunches. I did the laundry. I finished high school with an 87 average, while working 16 hours a week at a Tim Hortons on Barton Street. I was proud of that. I was proud of a lot of things nobody was watching me do. I got into the business administration program at Mohawk College. Not my first choice. I'd wanted to go to McMaster, had even gotten a conditional acceptance. But the gap between what bursaries covered and what we actually owed was $9,400 a year. And my father's income put us just over the threshold for most provincial grants. He sat me down at our kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg we kept meaning to fix, and he said, "Haley, I want you to go. I want that more than almost anything." He had his hands flat on the table the way he did when something mattered. "But I can't do it right now. I'm sorry." I told him it was okay. It wasn't okay. But I meant it the way you mean things when you love someone and the alternative is making them feel worse. What I found out 5 years later. What I only know because my father's sister, my Aunt Pam, told me over the phone. One night when she'd had 2 glasses of Riesling and couldn't carry the secret anymore. Was that 2 months before that conversation, my mother had called my father asking for $11,000. Said she was in trouble. Said it was urgent. He'd sent it. He hadn't told me because he was ashamed, and because he knew I would have been furious, and he was right on both counts. I did Mohawk in 2 years, got my diploma, got my license, started working at a property management office in Burlington for $19 an hour, doing everything from lease renewals to chasing contractors who didn't show up. My supervisor there, a woman named Deb who wore the same silver hoop earrings every day and had a laugh like a screen door in the wind, told me after 6 months that I was the only person she'd ever hired who'd already understood the job before she'd explained it. I met my husband Owen at a friend's cottage weekend near Perry Sound when I was 24. He was quiet and funny in the way that takes a few hours to notice. He grew up in Burlington, private school, family with a name that gets used as an adjective in certain circles. His parents owned 4 commercial properties across the GTA and ran a consulting firm out of a heritage building on Lakeshore in Oakville. His mother, Vivienne, and this is where the story turns, was the kind of woman who treated warmth like a limited resource she needed to budget carefully. She was never rude to me, not at first. She was something more strategic than rude. She asked questions that sounded like interest, but functioned like audits. "Where exactly did you go to school? And what is it your father does again?" She repeated my answers back to people with a half-second pause before them, the kind of pause that makes a statement out of a fact. She'd say, "Haley went to Mohawk, yes, the college in Hamilton," with the same tone you'd use to explain that a dish was made with the store-brand ingredients, but turned out fine. Owen didn't see it for a long time. When you grow up inside something, it looks like weather, just the way the air is. We got engaged when I was 26. I was by that point running a portfolio of 62 residential units for the company I'd joined after Burlington. I'd been headhunted. The offer had included a signing bonus, which I'd saved entirely. I was building something in the background, slowly, the way you build things when nobody's offering you a head start. 6 months before the wedding, I quietly registered Clearwater Property Management Inc. with the Ontario Business Registry. Single director. No press release. No LinkedIn announcement. My lawyer, a woman named Bex, sharp and unhurried, who once told me the best contracts are the ones nobody wants to look at, because there's nothing to argue about, ran everything through the company name. I kept my personal name completely off the public-facing materials. Why? Because I'd watched what happened in Owen's family when someone revealed ambition before it was armor. His cousin had mentioned a business idea at a Christmas dinner once, and his father's brother had spent the next 3 years telling people it hadn't worked out. Past tense, before it had even started. I wasn't giving anyone that kind of access. By the time Owen and I got married, Clearwater had 12 residential units and one small commercial lease in Stony Creek. I was managing it alone, on evenings and weekends, while keeping my day job. Owen knew. He thought it was great. He's genuinely like that, uncomplicated in his support. Which I know sounds like faint praise, but is actually one of the rarest things I've ever encountered. His mother gave a toast at our wedding that managed to mention Owen's accomplishments 4 times and mine 0. It was a masterclass. I poured myself more wine. Over the next 2 years, Clearwater grew. By last spring, we had 89 residential units, 2 commercial properties in Hamilton, and 1 in Grimsby, and I had 2 part-time contractors I was bringing on as full employees by Q3. Annual revenue had crossed $680,000. I wasn't going to be on the cover of anything, but I had built something real, with my own money, in the margins of my own life, and it was mine in a way that nothing had ever been mine before. Here's the part that still makes me shake my head a little when I think about it. Owen's parents had been having trouble with the management of a rental property they owned in Ancaster, a 6-unit residential building that had gone through 3 property managers in 4 years. Tenant complaints, maintenance backlogs, 2 units sitting vacant for 7 months. Owen's father, whose name is Douglas, and who I will say is a fundamentally decent man, operating inside a marriage that has calcified around his wife's preferences. Douglas mentioned at a family dinner that they were looking for someone new. Someone reliable, he said. Someone who actually returns calls. Owen didn't say anything to me about it directly. He mentioned it the way you mention something you're curious about but don't want to push. Funny coincidence, he said that night, washing dishes. I thought about it for a week. Then I had Bex send a proposal under the Clearwater name. Standard intro package, references, our fee structure, response time guarantees. Douglas called Bex's number to discuss. They agreed on terms. Clearwater took on the Ancaster property in February. Within 6 weeks, both vacant units were filled. Maintenance backlog cleared. I implemented a tenant communication system that cut complaint calls by more than half. Douglas mentioned to Owen that whoever was running Clearwater was, quote, exactly what we should have had years ago. He'd apparently told his wife the same thing. His wife, my mother-in-law, had started recommending Clearwater to people in her network. She told her book club. She told the women she plays tennis with on Thursday mornings. She told them without knowing. She told them with the confidence of someone who had discovered something good and wanted credit for finding it. I found this out through Owen's cousin Lee, who texted me a screenshot of a message her mother had received. If you need property management in the Hamilton area, Douglas found a wonderful company called Clearwater. Very professional. We've been very pleased. I sat with that for a long time. The anniversary dinner was Douglas and Vivienne's 35th. Owen's brother Garrett had booked a private room at a restaurant in Oakville. Good food, real tablecloths, the kind of place where the menus don't have prices on the version they give to guests. 64 people, family, old friends, a few of Douglas's business associates. I wore a navy dress I'd bought myself for a work presentation in Toronto. Simple, good fabric. I felt like myself in it. I'd been warned, in the way that families develop warning systems without ever naming them. Owen's aunt had texted me that afternoon. Vivienne's been in a mood, just so you know. I thanked her. I told her I'd be fine. The evening was pleasant enough until the toasts. Garrett went first. Generous, funny, good. Owen's sister, Meredith, said something sweet about her parents' partnership that made Douglas tear up slightly. Then Vivienne stood. She had clearly planned this. You can always tell when someone has planned something by how quickly they find their footing once they have the floor. She talked about Douglas, about their life together, about the family they'd built. She was good at this. She has a voice that carries without effort, and a way of making a room feel like it's leaning toward her. And then she turned to me. Owen's wife Haley is with us tonight, she said, and I felt every pair of eyes in the room move in my direction. She smiled. Haley has always been very independent. Her own path. A small pause. No formal education to speak of, a college diploma, I believe, which is perfectly fine, of course. She tilted her head. We love that she keeps busy. Owen has always been so patient. 2 people laughed. The nervous kind. The kind that's filling a silence, not responding to a joke. I want to tell you that I felt rage. Rage would have been cleaner. What I actually felt was something colder and more clarifying. The sensation of a decision that had been half made, somewhere below my awareness finally finishing itself. I counted to 4. Then I stood up. The room went quiet faster than I expected. I'd like to say something, I said, and my voice was steady. I want you to know that. It was completely steady. To Douglas and Vivienne, 35 years is a real thing. It takes real work, and I mean that sincerely. I looked at Douglas. He looked uncertain but not unkind. And I want to be honest tonight, because honesty is something I've learned to value more than comfort. I turned to the room. My mother-in-law just mentioned that I have no formal education to speak of. She's right that I went to college instead of university. She's also been recommending my company to her friends for the past 2 months. I paused. The property management company she's been calling wonderful and very professional. That's Clearwater. I own it. I built it. We currently manage 89 residential units and 3 commercial properties across the Hamilton and Grimsby areas. And we've been managing Douglas and Vivienne's Ancaster building since February. The building she told her book club is finally being run properly. The room did not make a sound. I'm not saying this to embarrass anyone. I said it and I meant it, or most of it. I'm saying it because I've spent 5 years being described as someone who keeps busy, and I'd like the record to be accurate, just once. I set down my glass, picked up my bag, and walked out. The drive home on the QEW was 22 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the car for a while. Not crying, just breathing. The way you breathe when something has been said that cannot be unsaid, and you're not sure yet whether that's a relief or a loss, and you decide to let it be both. I want to step outside the story for a moment. If you've ever been the partner someone's family is politely waiting for their child to outgrow, if you've ever sat at a table where your accomplishments were treated like a rumor, nobody felt the need to verify. If you've had someone describe your life to strangers, using only the parts that made you sound smaller than you were, this is for you. Leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, or tell me your story, or just tell me that you kept going anyway. I read every single one now. What happened next? 3 days after the dinner, Aunt Pam called again. This time she wasn't slightly into a Riesling. She was calm and deliberate, and she said, "Haley, there's something I should have told you years ago. About the money your father sent your mother." I told her I knew. "There's more," she said. "When I was 19, a year after I'd enrolled at Mohawk instead of McMaster, my grandmother on my father's side, Nonna Greer, who I'd visited every second Sunday until she passed, who kept a tin of shortbread on her counter that was always full no matter the season, had set aside money specifically for my education, $22,000, designated in writing to be used for school, certification, or professional training. She'd told the lawyer it was for me, and she'd told my father's sister to make sure I knew about it. My mother had been listed as a secondary contact on the estate correspondence, from back when my parents were still together, and the will had been written. She'd intercepted 2 letters, told the lawyer I had declined, redirected the funds. I went cold in a way that starts in your face and moves down. I called Bex the next morning. It took 5 weeks, 2 letters from her firm, and 1 uncomfortable phone call with an estate lawyer in Hamilton who had, thankfully, kept meticulous records. We recovered $19,400. The original amount had been partially disbursed, and the rest had accrued at a rate that made the math work out to something that felt less like justice and more like proof. I did not take my mother to court. I thought about it. I made lists. I talked to Bex and to my therapist, a careful and perceptive woman named Dr. Arsenault, who once said to me, "You can be angry and clear-eyed at the same time. They're not opposites." She's right. Instead, I donated the full $19,400 to the Mohawk College entrance bursary in Nonna Greer's name, for students from Hamilton who fell just over the threshold for provincial aid. The kind of student my 19-year-old self was. I cried when I sent the transfer confirmation. Not from sadness. From something that doesn't have a clean English word for it. The feeling of a weight changing shape inside you. Still there, but different. Owen and I talked for most of a night after the dinner. He hadn't known. I believe him. He's many things. Occasionally oblivious to his own family's patterns, in the way that people who grew up inside those patterns often are. But he is not dishonest with me, and he is not his mother. He sat across from me at our kitchen table, and he was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "I need to do better at seeing what's in front of me." That's not nothing. We are working on it. It's not easy, and I'm not going to tell you it is, because I'm tired of stories that sand down the parts that are still rough. His mother has not spoken to me directly since the dinner. Through Owen, I've gathered she's framing it as a misunderstanding, that she didn't know about the Clearwater connection. That I humiliated the family at an important occasion. Maybe some of that is even partly true. I've thought about the timing, the place I chose to say what I said. I've sat with whether I owe anyone an apology for the venue. Even if not the content. Here's what I came back to. I spent years correcting that woman's version of me in private, in low, patient voices, in conversations she changed the subject of, in accomplishments I mentioned once, and watched her file away without acknowledgement. Private correction didn't work. And I am 32 years old, and I am not in the business of being someone's polite cautionary tale anymore. Clearwater now has 4 full-time employees. We just signed on a new building in Waterdown. 14 units, our largest residential property yet. And Bex is reviewing a commercial leasing contract for a space in Hamilton's North End that I'm very close to saying yes to. I have a whiteboard in my home office that my father gave me as a joke birthday present, 3 years ago. A massive thing, the kind teachers use, And it is covered with numbers that would have seemed impossible to me when I was 19 eating discount pasta in a Mohawk res room, trying to figure out which loans I could defer. My father knows everything now, he cried. I told him the money was recovered and where it went. He said, Haley Bird, which is what he's called me since I was small. I don't know why, just one of those things that becomes true through repetition. He said, your grandmother would have liked knowing that. I have a photo of Nana Greer on my desk at home. She's standing in her backyard in Dundas. Summer, squinting a bit into the sun. She has this expression on her face that I've tried to name for years. I think it's just competence. The look of someone who knew how to do things and was satisfied by that. I didn't end up where I expected. McMaster was a door, and it stayed closed, and I walked the long way around, and the long way took me to something that's actually mine. Not assigned, not inherited, not handed over, built. I'm not going to tell you I'm not angry sometimes. Anger is honest and mine has clean edges now. It doesn't leak into places it doesn't belong. What I have on the other side of it is something I would trade for very little. Clarity about my own worth, an indifference to the opinions of people who decided what I was before they knew me, and the particular quiet confidence of a woman who knows exactly what's in her own bank account. There's a line, Doctor. Arsenal said to me once that I wrote on a post-it and stuck to the bottom of my monitor so I see it every morning. The people who underestimated you were giving you information about themselves. I keep that, I use it. If you're watching this from somewhere that felt like a ceiling, a family that measured your worth in credentials, a table where you were always slightly beside the point, I want you to know that ceilings are just floors you haven't gotten to yet. You're not what they said you were. You were never what they said you were. Until next time. This is Haley, and I'm building something they still don't fully understand, and I am completely fine with that.